working now, Will. Okay, I'm going to mute myself and away you go.
Oh, perfect. All right. Well, let me just reset the timer so don't overrun too badly. But yes, hello and thanks, Roger. Hopefully this will follow on really nicely from yours because there's a bit of insect migration decline in here as well. But anyway, yes, my name is Will Hawks and I'm a PhD student and insect migration scientist down at the University of Exeter. And I'm really quite close to the end of my PhD now. It's getting a bit scary, funded by the Royal Society. And this talk is going to be all about, well, it's titled The Migrants of Eden, and it's going to be all about my research a couple of years ago in Cyprus, all about insect migration and PhD. And here's a few stuff to keep in contact with our latest research coming through. And yeah, hopefully this Cyprus paper will be out. It's going to be submitted really soon, I hope. I'm currently flat out working on it. But yes, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Will. I've got a plethora of questions here. First one from Stephen Tapman. We lived in Iraq in the late 80s and Saddam was draining the marshes to displace the marsh Arabs. These were reflooded when the regime fell. Do you know if there's any historical data to show the disruption in migration over the period?
I don't know if there's any data at all, unfortunately. There may be some with butterflies, but I think as Roger was saying earlier, the lack of data sets is, in terms of insects, is certainly a problem. And we certainly just need to keep looking at it now. So hopefully in the future, they can be useful. But I'm certain that it would have had a big effect, like as Roger was saying, draining, getting rid of the water. Like so many of these insects rely on water to survive that yeah, that would have had a big effect, I'm sure. But I don't have any definitive answers, I'm afraid.
I mean, to answer Stephen, from 2010 onwards, there has been some suggestion that the grazing on the edges of the marshes and increased in salinity has meant that the coming back into health hasn't been as quick or as successful as was hoped, but it's still a work in progress. John Showers, is there any evidence that light sources draw in migrant insects as they do birds? And does this mean that they will see land much further away? Or is it all a diurnal migration?
So this was all diurnal migration, so that wouldn't have been an effect. But yeah, I'm certain that that would have had would have an effect for all the nighttime things. Yeah, we really wanted to look at the nighttime migrants there in Cyprus, but we got there like within the first week, our moth trap was stolen, and so we couldn't. But yeah, I'm sure it has a big effect. But also that area of Cyprus is almost completely devoid of light sources. It's really wild. But in other parts of the world, definitely, I'm sure that has a big effect.
Okay. Question here from Linda Pryke. Observation, Will and Roger. How much of Britain's Diptera are actually incoming rather than homegrown?
Oh, I wish I don't have any great definite for this, but I'm sure a lot of them are. You certainly see a big movement in of things like Epicephalus sportiatus, marmalade hoverflies, and tenax, and there are. And then in the autumn again, we've got a guy on the oil rigs in the North Sea, and he sees loads of Eupiodes hoverflies coming in August or so, coming down presumably from Scandinavia. And yeah, I don't think insects care at all about borders, and so there's just a big wash of insects tidal, and I think not every insect will do these huge movements up and down, but then I think there's a lot of sort of smaller scale migration that happens. There's a bit of evidence that bumblebees may go across the North Sea, and certainly in Sweden they go up and down from the south of Sweden across the sea into just further south. And so I think insects, if it doesn't feel right for them in the area, like environmentally or whatever, then there will be a bit of movement. So I don't know what percentage will be coming into the UK, but I would expect it's a fairly sizable amount. But then there's loads. It's a completely different life history to a lot of other flies, which are far more niche in their needs, and so they may stay where they are and just hibernate. Yeah, that's not a very good answer, but you know.
Okay, that's wonderful. Rod, did you have any input there?
Yes. I think we have to try to remember that what Will's been looking at are species that breed up very, very quickly and form very, very large aggregations. So things like episurface that will have anything like 4 or 5 generations a year. Eristalis tenax certainly is probably in the Middle East fairly consistently brooded and perhaps doesn't go through a winter rest period as we see in Europe. So these migrations are fast breeders and quite generalist. So in terms of what we see in the UK, when you get these spikes of numbers, they're migrants. The vast majority of British species are almost certainly single generation, perhaps 2 generations, and very specialist. So you don't get large numbers of them. They might be in good numbers in that area, but not big numbers overall. What we don't know is the degree to which these things actually move around. But we can say that if you create habitat, things arrive. And what we haven't done as yet is perhaps to look at a completely sterilized area, ideally in an agricultural desert, allow it to develop up, and look at what there is arriving year on year. Now, that's been done with dragonflies. Norman Moore did that many, many years ago. He followed he created a wildlife area with a large pond in it. And what was very surprising was, even though they weren't in the area, the dragonflies came in very quick numbers. So there is potential for recolonization. There are things that move around a lot, but not everything moves around a lot. And the things that are probably most under threat are the ones that are the least mobile, highly specialized and least mobile. Now, we can't characterize that yet. We could do some quite good guesswork on it, but we mustn't jump to too many conclusions at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you. Question here from Matthew Bulbert, more on the technique and methodology. Hi, Will. Fabulous talk. Lots to think about. When you say you counted individuals per frame of video, was there some level of automation? And if so, what did you do?
I wish there was some level of automation. There is, so that video that I showed wasn't quite what we were using. We just filmed like basically a rock on the other side of a track that these insects are passing through, and so we could see the insects passing this rock. And we recorded for 1 minute every 15 minutes throughout the day. And so when we got back to the UK and started analysing the data, we took the video file and then slowed it down or separated out frame by frame, and then just counted the numbers going across for that minute. And then we times that number by 15 to get to the next 15-minute count. And yeah, it was a lot of work. We had something like 4 million frames or something to go through. But yeah, there were some days of low numbers, but yeah, we wish that there was some level of automation. We've tried a lot, and we've tried different ways of, because we do the same work in the mountains, and we've tried removing the background and then just using software to go across. But we find that in the mountains, it was difficult because the wind sometimes made our tripod wobble, and then it would just completely mess up the background. And yeah, I think we're gonna, so after my PhD, hopefully we continue doing work on this using, and we think that these insect migration cameras are going to be a really important way of assessing how many are going through. And so, yeah, if we could get a way of making sure it's really stable and then also getting some software to count them, that would make our lives so much easier. I've just come back from the mountains and I know how much work I've got to do, and I get this Cyprus paper out with the Pyrenees data, just counting it all. But yeah, we don't use any automation as yet, but hopefully in the future.
One wonders if it's a portent of dystopia. You get ANPR for invertebrates flying across your camera. You can optically DNA them. I mean, what place for a field entomologist? Question here from, are we okay on time, Zoe?
I was just going to jump in. We are overrunning
Okay.
quite a bit. Is that okay with Donald? Because you're the next speaker. Are you okay? Donald's okay. And is Rob Davis there? Because he's the final speaker. I'm just wondering if it's okay with you that we're overrunning, Rob. Not sure where Rob is.
It's also okay. It's also okay with me if we're overrunning.
Okay. Oh yes. Sorry.
The questions seem so worthwhile, we could almost tabulate them and get the presenters, if they would, to answer them and publish it.
We do actually get a log of all the questions, so we can, if Will is willing, email the questions that we haven't dealt with yet to Will. Does that sound like a plan to try and get back on track?
I'm so happy with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's what we're going to do. So how far did we get, Mark? What was the last question that we dealt with?
It was Linda's. Oh, sorry, hold on. It was, no, it wasn't. It was the question on.
Where were we?
I'll work that out with you if we want to move onwards.
Okay. Well, I think we were somewhere around.
It was 12:17, Matthew Bulbert.
Matt, yes, I agree with that. Okay, so I've got a note of that. So everything after that needs to be emailed. Okay, I think that's the plan. So with that, thank you so much, Will. That was a great talk. That was really interesting. I mean, so much interesting stuff in there. That's really, astonishing, actually.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. So I think our next